Imagine you are standing in the middle of a crowded city street. You look to your left and you look to your right. You see people from all walks of life, some in tailored suits, some in workout gear, some rushing to catch a bus. On the surface, everyone seems to be holding it together. They have the latest smartphones, they are carrying expensive lattes, and they are driving cars that look like they belong in a showroom. But if you had a pair of X-ray glasses that could see through their leather wallets and into their digital bank accounts, you wouldn't see wealth. You would see a structural collapse. You would see a society that is performing middle class while drowning in a sea of red ink. Today, we are going to look at the numbers that most people are too terrified to whisper out loud. We are going to deconstruct the shocking money stats of the average person as we enter 2026. The hidden debt, the non-existent savings, and the high-speed treadmill of consumption that is designed to keep you running until you drop. We are going to look at why the average life is actually a financial emergency in slow motion. The first number we have to look at is the most deceptive one of all, the average American household income. Heading into 2026, that number has climbed to approximately $87,730. To someone looking at a spreadsheet, that sounds like a success story. It's a record high. But when you apply the cost of living filter, that number begins to evaporate before it ever hits your pocket. Once you subtract federal and state taxes, health insurance premiums, and the rising cost of basic utilities, that $87,000 is already cut by nearly a third. What remains is then fed into the single largest wealth extractor in human history, the housing market. The average person is now spending a record percentage of their pre-tax income just to keep a roof over their head. This is what economists call being house poor. You own a home or you rent a nice apartment, but the building itself is eating your future. The average person is not building an equity fortress. They are simply acting as a pass-through entity for a mortgage lender or a landlord. This leads us to the most terrifying statistic in the 2026 economy: the death of the safety net. For years, we talked about the $400 emergency. We worried that 40% of people couldn't afford a flat tire. But as we sit here today, the bar for emergency has moved. According to the latest 2026 reports, 53% of Americans indicate they do not have sufficient liquidity to cover a $1,000 emergency expense. Think about that for a second. We live in the wealthiest civilization in history, yet more than half of the people you pass on the street are one hospital visit or one major car repair away from financial insolvency. This isn't just a poverty problem, it is a middle-class crisis. There are people earning six-figure salaries who are still part of this statistic because their lifestyle has expanded to perfectly fill the container of their income. They are living in a high-voltage circuit with no surge protector. When life eventually strikes, and it always does, the entire system fries. If they don't have the $1,000 in cash, where does it come from? It comes from the plastic safety net. Total U.S. credit card debt has surged past $1.28 trillion as we enter 2026. The average American household now carries over $9,148 in credit card debt. We have normalized the idea of revolving debt to the point where we don't even see it as a crisis anymore. We treat a credit card balance like a monthly utility bill, something that just exists as part of the background noise of life. But credit card debt is not a utility. It is a financial parasite. With average interest rates currently locked at a staggering 21%, the average person is paying thousands of dollars a year just for the privilege of having spent money they didn't have years ago. You are working 40 hours a week, but the first 10 hours of your labor are going directly to a bank to pay for a vacation you've already forgotten or a meal you've already digested. The average person is also an expert at the auto payment trap. The average monthly payment on a financed new vehicle reached a record of $772 at the end of last year. When you add in insurance, fuel, and maintenance, the average person is spending over $1,100 a month just to move their body from point A to point B. This is the ultimate frictionless extraction. The dealership doesn't ask you if you can afford the $50,326 average price of a new car. They ask you if you can afford the monthly slice. They sell you the payment so you don't notice the size of the whole loaf. By the time that car is paid off, its value has depreciated by 60%, and the average person immediately goes back to the dealership to sign up for another 7 years of payments. We are spending our most productive years paying for depreciating metal boxes that spend 95% of their time sitting in a driveway. What about the future? As we look at people in their 60s today, the median retirement balance is roughly $186,902. On the surface, that looks better than the stats from 5 years ago. But when you apply the 4% rule of safe withdrawals, that $186,000 provides a measly $7,440 a year in income. That is not a retirement. That is a disaster. According to the latest surveys, people in this age group believe they need at least $760,000 to retire comfortably, while Gen X believes they need $1.18 million. The gap between reality and the average life is a canyon. We have traded our long-term freedom for short-term convenience and the temporary dopamine hit of a new purchase. The math of the average life is a zero-sum game. The average person saves less than 5% of their income. In a world where consumer prices are 26% higher than they were just 6 years ago, a 5% savings rate is effectively a slow-motion bankruptcy. It provides no margin for error, no ability to seize opportunities, and no protection against the inevitable black swan events of life. We are living on the edge of a cliff and calling it stability. We look at our neighbors and see them doing the same thing, so we assume it's okay. We find comfort in the crowd, even if the crowd is walking toward a ledge. To break away from these shocking stats, you have to become unaverage. You have to reintroduce the friction that the modern economy has worked so hard to remove. You have to realize that the average person is the target of every marketing department, every credit card issuer, and every car dealership in the world. They want you to be average because the average person is the most profitable person to exploit. Being unaverage means living in a house that is smaller than you can afford. It means driving a car that is 10 years old and paid for. It means having an emergency fund that makes you feel boring because it's just sitting there in a high-yield account. The most important money stat isn't your income, it's your gap, the distance between what you earn and what you spend. The average person has narrowed that gap to a razor's edge. They are performing wealth while accumulating poverty. If you want to escape the statistics, you have to stop playing the game of appearances. You have to realize that true wealth is the things you don't see. It's the peace of mind of having no debt, the freedom of having a year's worth of expenses in the bank, and the ability to say no to a job you hate because you aren't a slave to your monthly payments. The numbers don't lie, but they are very good at hiding. The average person is struggling, stressed, and one bad break away from a collapse. Don't be average. See the system for what it is. A machine designed to keep you consuming until there's nothing left. Close the gap, kill the debt, and bring the friction back into your spending. Because the only thing more shocking than the stats of the average person is how easy it is to fall into the trap if you aren't paying attention. The goal isn't to look rich. The goal is to be free. And in the modern world, being free is the most un-average thing you can do.